Who won the 1999 NBA Finals? Had to look it up? Well, it's the San Antonio Spurs, the aging Admiral David Robinson, and the young fundamental Tim Duncan. Their opponent in the East? Well, an 8th seed, in Patrick Ewing and the New York Knicks. You know who wouldn't let an 8th seed to a trip to the NBA Finals? Especially Patrick Ewing? Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. Have you ever wondered what if the Bulls did not blow up in 1998? Can they still rule the NBA for a four-peat? In today's video, we're going to revisit the legacy of the famed Chicago Bulls and the what-ifs of The Last Dance. This is Rebuilding the Bulls, the era after Michael Jordan and Phil Jackson. When thinking about dynasties, surely Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls in the 90s would come to mind. The Chicago Bulls dynasty began in 1991 when they won their first NBA championship by defeating the Los Angeles Lakers. That victory marked the beginning of an era where the Bulls were practically unstoppable. With Michael Jordan leading the charge, Scottie Pippen providing the perfect sidekick, and Phil Jackson's triangle offense orchestrating the show, the Bulls were a well-oiled machine. Between 1991 and 1998, the Bulls won 6 NBA championships, including 2 separate three-peats from 1991 and 1993, and 1996 to 1998. During this time, the Bulls were the definition of basketball excellence. They weren't just winning, they were dominating. Jordan, Pippen, and later Dennis Rodman formed a trio that could outplay, outthink, and outlast any opponent. But behind the scenes, not everything was as harmonious as it seemed. Despite the Bulls' success, there were signs that the dynasty might not last forever. Much of this tension stemmed from the team's general manager, Jerry Krause. Krause, who had played a significant role in assembling the Bulls roster, was known for his mantra that organizations win championships, not players.
Krause wants to make the point, organizations win championships, not players.
Jerry Krause, the Bulls general manager, says, quote, organizations win titles, not players, end quote.
I do sincerely believe that organizations as a whole win.
While this was true to some extent, it didn't sit well with the superstars who were actually on the court. In 1997, Krause started to hint that the 1998 season would be the last dance for this Bulls team. He was increasingly at odds with Phil Jackson, and despite Jackson's success, Krause made it clear that Jackson would not be returning as head coach after the 1997-1998 season, no matter how well the team performed. This news didn't just ruffle feathers, it sent shockwaves through the team. Jordan, who had always said he would not play for another coach, made it known that if Jackson was out, he was out too.
And if he wasn't going to be a coach, then, obviously I wasn't going to play.
The 1997-1998 season became a dramatic, tension-filled campaign. The Bulls were not just fighting for a championship. They were fighting to keep their legacy intact. And that's exactly what they did. Despite all the off-court drama, the Bulls entered the 1997-1998 season determined to go out on top. The season was anything but smooth. Injuries, aging players, and internal conflicts all took their toll. But if there's one thing Michael Jordan was known for, it was his ability to rise to the occasion. The Bulls battled their way through the regular season, finishing with a 62-20 record. In the playoffs, they faced tough competition, particularly from the Indiana Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals. That series went the full 7 games, but the Bulls, led by Jordan's heroics, managed to advance to the NBA Finals. In the finals, the Bulls faced the Utah Jazz for the 2nd straight year. It was a hard-fought series, with the Jazz pushing the Bulls to the brink. But in Game 6, with the Bulls down by 3 points in the final moments, Jordan stole the ball from Karl Malone, dribbled down the court, and hit what would become one of the most iconic shots in NBA history. A 20-foot jumper over Byron Russell to give the Bulls a 1-point lead. The Bulls held on to win the game and the series, securing their 6th championship in 8 years. Jordan's shot over Russell wasn't just a game winner, it was a storybook ending to one of the greatest dynasties in sports history. But it was also the end of an era.
Well, it was a trying year. We all were trying to enjoy that year, knowing that it was coming to an end. I was hoping that, the beginning of the season, it basically started when Jerry Krause told Phil that, he can go 82-0 and he would never get the chance to come back.
After winning their 6th championship, the Bulls dynasty was dismantled almost immediately. True to his word, Jerry Krause did not renew Phil Jackson's contract. With Jackson gone, Michael Jordan announced his second retirement from basketball.
That Michael Jordan is retiring again from professional basketball, just what the NBA needs as it tries to get a half-baked season off the ground.
Scottie Pippen, who had been underpaid throughout his Bulls career, was traded to the Houston Rockets, where he hoped to find success on his own terms. Dennis Rodman, the league's most colorful character, was released and bounced around a few teams before eventually retiring. Phil Jackson took a year off before returning to coach the Los Angeles Lakers, where he would win 5 more championships with Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal. Jordan, after a brief stint in retirement, came back to the NBA in 2001 to play for the Washington Wizards, though his final comeback was far less successful than his time with the Bulls. Pippen would play a few more seasons with the Rockets and Portland Trail Blazers before retiring, while Rodman's post-Bulls career was marked by more off-court antics than on-court success. With the departure of their stars and the man who led them to glory, the Bulls entered the 1998-1999 season a shell of their former selves. The roster was filled with young, inexperienced players and veterans past their prime. Unsurprisingly, the team struggled mightily. The Bulls finished the lockout-shortened 1999 season with a dismal 13-37 record, the worst in the NBA. The team that had once been the pride of the league was now its laughingstock, and it didn't get much better. Throughout the early 2000s, the Bulls remained stuck in mediocrity. Despite numerous attempts to rebuild through the draft and free agency, they couldn't find the magical formula to return to contention. The once feared Chicago Bulls were now a team that opponents circled on the calendar as an easy win. It wasn't until 2008 that the Bulls' fortunes began to change. That year, they won the NBA draft lottery and used the first overall pick to select Derrick Rose, a dynamic point guard from Chicago. Rose was exactly what the Bulls needed, a superstar talent who could lead the team back to relevance. And for a while, it looked like he might do just that. Rose's impact was immediate. He won the Rookie of the Year award in 2009 and led the Bulls to the playoffs. By 2011, Rose was the league's MVP, the youngest player ever to win the award. The Bulls finished the 2010-2011 season with the best record in the NBA, and it seemed like the Bulls were finally back. But just when it looked like the Bulls were poised to compete for a championship, tragedy struck.
You were crying out that you bypassed the harder team in Miami Heat.
Rose came down bad on his left foot. See him holding onto his knee and down.
During the 2012 playoffs, Rose tore his ACL, an injury that would sideline him for over a year. Without their star player, the Bulls' championship hopes were dashed. Rose would suffer multiple injuries in the following years, and the team that once looked like a contender quickly fell back into mediocrity. It was a domino effect that lasted for 3 decades. Since the breakup of the Dynasty in 1998, the Chicago Bulls have not won another NBA championship. In fact, they haven't even made it back to the NBA Finals. It's a far cry from the glory days of the 1990s, and many fans still wonder what could have been if Jerry Krause had not decided to dismantle the team. Instead of continuing their dominance, the Bulls chose to rebuild, and they've been trying to find their way back to the top ever since. So the million-dollar question, could they have done it? First, let's just recognize game. Despite all the hatred towards Jerry Krause, he did form one hell of a team. He became an architect of the greatest dynasty of all time, but he did rob us one more season of greatness. All he needed to do was to sign Phil for one more season, give Scottie Pippen the money he deserves, and keep the rest of the core. Michael Jordan has been very vocal that he can still play one more season as long as Phil Jackson was coaching. And with the shortened season, MJ, Pippen, Rodman, and the rest of Chicago's core would have plenty of energy come postseason. Just imagine, they had to play just 50 games and cruise their way into the playoffs. 3 teams tied for the first seed in the East in 1999. The Heat, the Pacers, and the Magic. All were solid teams, but they just don't have it in them. They let the aging Patrick Ewing whoop their ass. There's no question, MJ and the Bulls will rule the weak Eastern Conference. Now, that left us with one more question. Can they beat the duo of David Robinson and Tim Duncan and the San Antonio Spurs? First of all, it would be a coaching masterclass between the 2 greatest coaches to ever live, Greg Popovich and Phil Jackson. The Spurs got a talented squad, one of the most forgotten NBA championship teams of all time. The twin towers of David Robinson and Tim Duncan were almost unstoppable. But as the old saying goes, you can't teach experience. MJ and the Bulls have gone to war. 6 NBA finals, 0 losses. You can never underestimate that. Championship DNA just runs through their blood. Plus, the drama in The Last Dance would have been gone. MJ would be happy to defend his title one last time and say a proper goodbye to his city, Chicago. Pippen stain would mean that he got paid by Krause, which will cleanse any sour taste in his mouth. And of course, the luxury of coaching the team without any controversies shrouding their success. And MJ said it himself. At the end of the series finale of The Last Dance, Michael Jordan made the claim that he felt like the Bulls could have won a 4th straight NBA championship in 1999, which would have been number 7 for him and the Bulls franchise.
It's maddening, because I felt like we could have won 7. I really believe that. We may not have, but man, just not to be able to try, that's something that, I just can't accept. For whatever reason, I just can't accept it.
He said that the team was robbed of the opportunity and that they were entitled to defend what was theirs until somebody took it. But of course, at the end of the day, it's always going to be a massive what if. It's easy to play the what if game when it comes to sports, and the Chicago Bulls are no exception. What if Jerry Krause had decided to keep Phil Jackson? What if Michael Jordan had stayed for one more season? What if Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman hadn't been traded away? The truth is, we'll never know what might have happened. But one thing is certain. The decision to break up the Bulls dynasty in 1998 haunted the franchise for decades. If you're not going to win a championship for almost 30 years, exploding the greatest roster of all time will always be a bad move. Now, it's your turn to share your thoughts. Do you think MJ and the Bulls could have won their 7th title? Would the Spurs be their greatest finals competition? Leave your comments down below. And as always, thank you for watching.